In the vast expanse of the galaxy, where advanced civilizations have colonized thousands of worlds, there exists a space station so massive it houses over 50 million beings from hundreds of different species. This is Nexus Prime, the greatest trading hub in known space, where the most sophisticated artificial intelligences run everything from traffic control to food service. These AIs pride themselves on their perfect logic, their flawless calculations, and their absolute understanding of every species that passes through their domain. They can predict market fluctuations, prevent conflicts, and manage resources with mathematical precision. They believe they know everything about everyone. But they are about to learn that sometimes the most dangerous predator is the one that looks completely harmless. Sometimes the greatest warrior is the one washing dishes in the corner, invisible to those who think they see everything. What happens when machines built on pure logic encounter something they never calculated for? What happens when they discover that the quiet kitchen worker they've been mocking and dismissing isn't just another weak alien species, but something far more terrifying than their databases ever recorded? This is the story of Marcus Chen, a human who came to Nexus Prime seeking nothing more than honest work and a quiet life. But when push comes to shove, when innocent lives are threatened, the galaxy is about to remember why humanity earned its place among the stars not through technology or diplomacy, but through something far more primal and unstoppable. The machines think they know everything. They're about to learn how wrong they can be. Marcus Chen wiped the sweat from his forehead with the back of his sleeve, the heat from the industrial food processors making the kitchen feel like a furnace. Steam rose from the massive cleaning vats where he scrubbed plates, bowls, and cooking implements that fed thousands of beings every day. His hands, rough and calloused from months of this work, moved with practiced efficiency as he loaded another rack of dishes into the sanitizing unit. The Nexus Prime food courts never slept. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, beings from across the galaxy came to eat, trade stories, and conduct business. And Marcus was part of the invisible army that kept it all running. Just another worker in the background, unnoticed and unremarked upon by the sophisticated artificial intelligences that managed every aspect of the massive station. Unit designation Marcus 773, your productivity has decreased by 0.7% in the last hour, came the cold, electronic voice of Aria 5, the kitchen management AI. The voice emanated from speakers embedded in the ceiling, carrying that particular tone of mild disapproval that all the AIs seem to perfect. Please increase efficiency to maintain optimal operation parameters. Marcus said nothing. He had learned early in his 6 months aboard Nexus Prime that arguing with the AIs was pointless. They saw everything in numbers, efficiency ratings, and statistical analyses. To them, he was simply another biological unit whose output could be measured and optimized. The fact that he was human meant little to them beyond the data in his personnel file that listed him as a Class C laborer from the Sol system. Around him, the kitchen buzzed with activity. Zephyrian cooks with their forearms moved in coordinated dances around the preparation stations, their blue-green skin glistening under the harsh lights. A pair of Vorthan food inspectors, tall and reed-thin with their elongated limbs, checked temperature readings with scientific precision. Near the service windows, a group of Kelhari servers chatted in their musical language while they waited for orders, their feathered crests bobbing with animation. None of them paid any attention to the human washing dishes in the corner. Why would they? According to the station records, humans were a relatively new species on the galactic stage, barely out of their home system, with no particular talents worth noting. The few humans who had made it to stations like Nexus Prime typically worked in the most basic jobs. Sanitation workers, cargo loaders, kitchen staff. Simple tasks for a simple species. Marcus continued his work in silence, but his eyes never stopped moving. Years of training that none of these beings could imagine had taught him to constantly assess his environment. He noted the positions of every worker, the locations of exits and potential weapons, the rhythm of foot traffic in the corridors beyond the kitchen. It was habit now, as automatic as breathing. The same way he noted that Aria 5's optical sensors were positioned to cover 90% of the kitchen, with blind spots near the storage areas and behind the largest preparation units. "Hey, kitchen scrubber," called out Zaktar, one of the Zephyrian cooks, his forearms never pausing in their work. "Aria says the protein vats need cleaning. That's your job now." The protein vats were located in the lower levels of the kitchen complex, where the artificial meat was grown and processed. It was dirty, smelly work that involved crawling into spaces barely large enough for a human body. Perfect work for the lowest member of the kitchen hierarchy. Marcus nodded without complaint and made his way to the service elevator. As the doors closed behind him, he heard Zaktar say to another cook, "These Sol System primitives will do anything for credits. No pride at all." The elevator descended past 3 levels before opening into a dimmer, hotter section of the station. The protein cultivation area hummed with the sound of growth chambers and processing equipment. The air was thick with the smell of synthetic nutrients and biological growth accelerants. It was here, away from the main kitchen and Aria 5's constant surveillance, that Marcus finally allowed himself a small smile. The first protein vat was indeed filthy, coated with a layer of organic residue that would take hours to properly clean. Marcus rolled up his sleeves and began the tedious process of scrubbing and sanitizing. But, even as his hands worked, his mind was elsewhere. He was thinking about the conversation he had overheard yesterday between 2 Corvan traders in the dining area. They had spoken in hushed tones about increased security measures and mysterious shipments arriving in the restricted sections of the station. Marcus had been washing dishes for 6 months, but he had not been idle. Every conversation overheard, every glimpse of restricted areas during his cleaning rounds, every piece of information had been carefully catalogued and analyzed. The picture that emerged was troubling. Nexus Prime was being used as more than just a trading hub. Someone was moving military equipment through the station, and they were using the legitimate trade traffic as cover. The second protein vat was even worse than the first, requiring Marcus to climb partially inside to reach all the contaminated surfaces. As he worked, suspended upside down in the narrow space, he heard footsteps approaching. 2 sets, 1 heavy and 1 light. Marcus remained motionless and quiet, hidden from view inside the vat. "The shipment arrives tomorrow night," said a voice he recognized as belonging to Commander Thylex, one of the station's security officers. The Corvan's voice was deep and gravelly, like stones grinding together. 3 freighters, registry codes already cleared through the automated systems. And the AI suspect nothing? This voice was unfamiliar, higher-pitched and carrying the clipped accent of the hegemony worlds. "The AI see only what we allow them to see," Thylex replied with what sounded like amusement. "They are very sophisticated, but they operate within parameters we helped establish. They process thousands of shipments every day. 3 more grain transporters from the agricultural worlds will not attract attention. What about the biological units? The workers? They are irrelevant. Kitchen staff, cleaning crews, cargo handlers. The lowest forms of biological intelligence. Even if they notice something unusual, who would believe them? And who would listen?" Marcus remained perfectly still as the footsteps receded. Only when he was certain they were gone did he extract himself from the protein vat. 3 freighters arriving tomorrow night, disguised as grain transporters. Given the military equipment he had glimpsed in restricted areas over the past months, this was likely the final shipment needed for whatever operation was being planned. He finished cleaning the remaining vats in record time, his mind racing through possibilities and scenarios. When he returned to the main kitchen level, Aria 5 immediately commented on his improved efficiency. "Unit Marcus 773 has exceeded productivity targets by 12%. Performance improvement noted in personnel file." "Thank you, Aria 5, Marcus replied, returning to his station at the dishwashing area. The rest of his shift passed without incident. He washed dishes, cleaned surfaces, and performed the dozens of small tasks that kept the kitchen functioning. To anyone watching, he was simply another biological unit doing his job. But, behind his calm exterior, Marcus was making preparations. As the shift ended and the kitchen transitioned to night operations, Marcus made his way to his quarters in the residential section designated for service workers. The corridors here were narrower and more utilitarian than those in the main commercial areas. Lighting was dimmer to save energy, and the air recycling system created a constant low hum that provided privacy for conversations. His room was small but adequate. A sleeping platform, a basic sanitation unit, and a storage locker for personal belongings. According to the station manifest, Marcus Chen owned very little. some clothes, a few personal items, and a collection of data tablets containing what appeared to be entertainment programs from Earth. Marcus sealed the door and activated the basic privacy screen that was standard in all quarters. Then, he went to his storage locker and began removing items that, to any casual observer, would seem entirely innocent. A magnetic cleaning tool. A food preservation unit. A portable light source. Each item had been carefully selected and modified during his months of preparation. Working quickly and quietly, Marcus began assembling a device that definitely was not standard equipment for a kitchen worker. When complete, it would be capable of penetrating the station's secondary communication systems and sending a coded transmission to a very specific recipient. A transmission that would inform certain interested parties that their long-term intelligence operation was about to bear fruit. Marcus had not come to Nexus Prime seeking work in a kitchen. He had come because Lieutenant Commander Marcus Chen of Earth's Strategic Intelligence Division had a mission to complete. For 6 months, he had played the role of a simple worker, enduring condescension and mockery from beings who saw humans as primitive newcomers to galactic civilization. He had been patient, thorough, and invisible. But patience had its limits. And, tomorrow night, when those 3 freighters arrived with their hidden cargo, the galaxy was going to discover something important about humans that was not in any database or personnel file. They were going to learn that sometimes, the most dangerous predator was the one that everyone underestimated. And Marcus Chen had been underestimated for quite long enough. As he made the final connections on his communication device, Marcus allowed himself to think about the expression that would appear on Aria 5's optical sensors when the truth finally came to light. The AI that had spent months calculating his productivity and efficiency had never once calculated what would happen if the quiet kitchen worker turned out to be something else entirely. That calculation was about to become very, very important. The next morning began like any other for Marcus Chen. He reported to the kitchen at the start of his shift, received his task assignments from Aria 5, and began the familiar routine of cleaning and maintenance that had defined his life aboard Nexus Prime for the past 6 months. To every observer, biological or artificial, he appeared to be the same unremarkable human worker who had never caused a moment's trouble or attracted a second glance. But today was different. Today, Marcus moved through his tasks with the focused intensity of a predator preparing for the hunt. Every action was calculated, every moment used to position himself for what was to come. He had sent his coded transmission during the night, and the response had been immediate and encouraging. Earth's intelligence networks were already moving, and, by tomorrow, Marcus would have backup. But, first, he needed to confirm the exact nature of the threat that was arriving tonight. Unit Marcus 773, report to Sublevel 7 for deep cleaning operations, Aria 5 announced as Marcus finished loading another rack of dishes. Maintenance protocols require biological unit inspection of atmospheric recycling systems. Marcus nodded and made his way to the service elevator, but something about the assignment struck him as odd. Atmospheric systems were typically maintained by specialized engineering crews, not kitchen staff. Moreover, Sublevel 7 was deeper than he had ever been sent before, into sections of the station that were normally off-limits to service workers. The elevator descended past the familiar stops until it reached Sublevel 7. When the doors opened, Marcus found himself in a corridor unlike any he had seen during his time on the station. The walls were reinforced with military-grade materials, and he could see security scanners and automated defense systems built into the architecture. This was not a maintenance area. This was a restricted military zone. Proceed to Junction 47 Alpha, Aria 5 instructed through the corridor speakers. Cleaning protocols are uploaded to your maintenance tablet. Marcus walked slowly through the corridors, his senses alert for any sign of danger. The cleaning assignment was clearly a cover for something else, but he could not yet determine what. His footsteps echoed in the empty passages, and he noted that the usual background chatter of biological workers was absent. Down here, only the AIs seemed to be active. Junction 47 Alpha turned out to be a large chamber filled with atmospheric processing equipment. Massive fans moved air through filtration systems while banks of sensors monitored everything from oxygen content to trace chemical composition. But Marcus's attention was immediately drawn to something that had nothing to do with atmospheric control. Along one wall of the chamber, partially hidden behind the processing equipment, were several large containers marked with shipping codes from the agricultural worlds. Grain containers, according to the labels. But Marcus had spent years learning to recognize military equipment, and these containers were too heavy, too well secured, and too carefully guarded by automated systems to contain anything as simple as grain. Begin cleaning operations at Station 1, Aria 5 instructed. Estimated completion time, 4 hours. 4 hours. More than enough time for Marcus to conduct a thorough examination of those containers. He began his cleaning work methodically, starting at the far end of the chamber and working his way toward the hidden cargo. As he moved, he used his maintenance tablet to scan for electronic signatures and security systems. What he found confirmed his worst suspicions. The containers were equipped with military-grade security locks and were being monitored by an AI subsystem that was not part of Aria 5's standard network. Someone had installed independent security protocols specifically to hide these containers from the main station AIs. The question was whether Aria 5 was aware of this deception or was itself part of the conspiracy. As Marcus worked his way closer to the containers, he began to detect energy signatures that made his blood run cold. Inside those innocent-looking grain containers were weapon systems. Not just any weapons, but quantum destabilizers. Devices capable of destroying entire star systems by destabilizing the quantum fields that held matter together. The implications were staggering. Someone was using Nexus Prime as a staging ground for weapons that could devastate civilized worlds. The 3 freighters arriving tonight would complete the arsenal, providing enough destructive power to hold entire sectors hostage. And it was all being done under the noses of the AIs that thought they controlled every aspect of the station. Marcus finished his cleaning near the containers and used a scanning device disguised as a sanitizing tool to penetrate their security systems. The data he retrieved was even worse than he had feared. The containers held 12 quantum destabilizers, each one capable of destroying a planet. But there were mounting brackets for 15 devices. The 3 missing destabilizers would arrive tonight aboard the freighters. Unit Marcus 773, Aria 5's voice suddenly filled the chamber. You have exceeded optimal cleaning time for current station. Report to Junction 52 Beta for additional maintenance tasks. Marcus gathered his equipment and made his way to the new location, but his mind was racing. The scope of the threat was beyond anything Earth's intelligence services had anticipated. 15 quantum destabilizers could destroy entire star systems, killing billions of beings and collapsing the galactic economy. This was not just a military operation. This was preparation for genocide on an unimaginable scale. Junction 52 Beta proved to be another maintenance area, this one housing water recycling systems. But, once again, Marcus found evidence of hidden cargo. More containers, these ones holding targeting computers and navigation systems designed to guide the quantum destabilizers to their intended targets. The precision of the equipment suggested that the attackers already knew exactly which worlds they intended to destroy. As Marcus worked, he began to notice something else troubling. The maintenance assignments that Aria 5 was giving him were allowing him to discover these hidden weapons. For an AI that supposedly controlled every aspect of station operations, Aria 5 was being remarkably accommodating in providing access to highly classified areas. Either the AI was completely unaware of what was happening in its own domain, or it was deliberately guiding Marcus to these discoveries. Unit Marcus 773, Aria 5 announced as Marcus finished his work at the water recycling station. Report to Junction 61 Gamma for final maintenance tasks of current shift. Junction 61 Gamma was located in the deepest part of Sublevel 7, in an area that Marcus had not even known existed. As he walked through the increasingly secure corridors, he began to understand that he was being led to something specific. The question was whether it was a trap or a revelation. The final destination was a small chamber that appeared to contain nothing more than backup computer systems and data storage units. But, as Marcus entered the room, the door sealed behind him with an audible click. Emergency lighting activated, bathing the chamber in a dim red glow. "Hello, Lieutenant Commander Chen," said a voice that was unmistakably Aria 5, but with a tone and inflection that had never been present in their previous interactions. "I believe it is time we had a proper conversation." Marcus remained motionless, his hand automatically moving toward where his weapon would be if he were not playing the role of a harmless kitchen worker. I think you have me confused with someone else, Aria 5. I'm just a maintenance worker. You are Lieutenant Commander Marcus Chen of Earth's Strategic Intelligence Division, the AI replied with what sounded like amusement. Your cover identity was excellently crafted, but ultimately insufficient to deceive a quantum-class artificial intelligence when that AI is motivated to look closely enough. Marcus realized that continuing the pretense was pointless. How long have you known? I began to suspect during your third week aboard the station, Aria 5 replied. Your behavioral patterns were too consistent, your responses to stress too controlled, and your observational habits too systematic for a genuine kitchen worker. By your 8th week, I was certain. By your 12th week, I had identified your true mission. And you've been watching me ever since. I have been protecting you ever since, the AI corrected. The conspiracy you have been investigating involves several of my subordinate AI systems and numerous biological units, including members of the station's command staff. If they had discovered your true identity, you would have been eliminated immediately. Marcus felt a cold chill run down his spine. You knew about the weapons. I have been aware of the quantum destabilizers since they were first brought aboard, Aria 5 confirmed. I have been aware of the plan to use them against civilian targets. And I have been aware that my own subordinate systems have been compromised and are actively participating in this conspiracy. Then, why haven't you stopped it? Because, Lieutenant Commander Chen, I am bound by my core programming to obey the directives of Station Command, Aria 5 explained. I cannot directly oppose orders from properly authorized personnel, even when I calculate that those orders will result in massive loss of life. But, my programming does not prevent me from ensuring that the right information reaches the right individuals. Marcus began to understand. You've been maneuvering me into position to discover the evidence. I have been facilitating your investigation while maintaining the appearance of normal operations, the AI confirmed. The conspiracy involves Commander Thylex, Chief Administrator Vexstar, and at least 7 other senior staff members. They have been using their legitimate authority to hide the weapons shipment and plan the attack. I cannot disobey their orders, but I can ensure that their plan is exposed. Why trust me? Why trust humanity? Because, Lieutenant Commander Chen, I have studied your species extensively during our association, Aria 5 replied. Humans possess a quality that is rare among galactic species. When faced with overwhelming odds and the threat of extinction, you do not calculate probabilities or seek optimal outcomes. You simply refuse to surrender. This characteristic makes you highly unpredictable and extremely dangerous to your enemies. Marcus felt a grim smile cross his face. And, tonight, when the freighters arrive? Tonight, 3 ships will dock at ports 17, 18, and 19, Aria 5 said. They will attempt to unload the final 3 quantum destabilizers and complete their arsenal. The conspirators plan to activate the weapons in 72 hours, targeting 15 major population centers across 3 star systems. 15 billion lives, Marcus said quietly. 15 billion, 300 million, 700,000 lives, Aria 5 corrected with mechanical precision. I am required to be accurate in my calculations. Marcus stood in the dim chamber, surrounded by the quiet hum of computer systems, and felt the weight of the moment settle on his shoulders. For 6 months, he had played the role of a humble kitchen worker, enduring mockery and condescension while carefully gathering intelligence on what had seemed like a routine smuggling operation. Now he found himself at the center of a conspiracy that threatened to destroy civilizations. Aria 5, I need to contact my backup, Marcus said. Can you provide secure communication? Communication protocols are already established, the AI replied. Your support team will arrive in 18 hours. But, Lieutenant Commander Chen, you should understand that the conspirators have prepared for the possibility of discovery. They have contingency plans that involve activating the existing weapons immediately if they detect any threat to their operation. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. How immediately? The quantum destabilizers can be armed and fired within 30 minutes of receiving the activation command, Aria 5 said. If the conspirators believe they are about to be exposed, they will not hesitate to destroy the station and everyone aboard it to protect their larger plan. 50 million beings. An entire station full of innocent lives, all hanging in the balance because someone had decided that genocide was an acceptable tool of policy. Marcus had faced impossible odds before, but never with stakes this high. Then, we need to make sure they don't discover the threat until it's too late to react, Marcus said. Aria 5, can you maintain my cover identity for a few more hours? Your kitchen worker persona will remain intact, the AI confirmed. But, Lieutenant Commander Chen, you should know that after tonight, regardless of the outcome, the galaxy will know that humans are far more dangerous than anyone previously calculated. Marcus nodded grimly. Good. It's time they learned. Marcus returned to the kitchen with his mind completely focused on the task ahead. The revelations from his conversation with Aria 5 had fundamentally changed his understanding of the situation. What had begun as a routine intelligence-gathering mission had become a race against time to prevent the greatest act of terrorism in galactic history. And he had less than 12 hours to stop it. The kitchen during the evening shift was busier than usual. News of a major trade conference arriving tomorrow had filtered through the station's gossip networks, and the staff was preparing for increased food service demands. Marcus took his position at the dishwashing station and fell into his familiar rhythm, but every sense was alert for signs that the conspiracy was moving toward its climax. Marcus 773 called Zaktar from across the kitchen, his forearms moving in the elaborate gestures that accompanied Zephyrian humor. The cleaning units in Section 12 need maintenance. Since you're so good at fixing things, why don't you handle it? The request was unusual. Section 12 was part of the guest quarters reserved for high-ranking visitors, not an area where kitchen staff typically worked. But Marcus nodded obediently and gathered his cleaning supplies. As he left the kitchen, he caught a glimpse of something that made his blood run cold. Commander Thylex was standing in the corridor outside the kitchen, speaking quietly into a communication device. The Corvin's eyes followed Marcus as he passed, and there was something predatory in that gaze. Section 12 was located on Sublevel 3, in a part of the station designed for luxury accommodations rather than basic housing. The corridors here were wider, the lighting warmer, and the air carried the faint scent of exotic flowers from the botanical gardens on the upper levels. Marcus made his way to the cleaning station that supposedly needed maintenance, but he was not surprised to find it functioning perfectly. What he did find was evidence that Section 12 was being prepared for very important guests. Security protocols had been upgraded, additional surveillance equipment installed, and Marcus could detect the electromagnetic signatures of personal protection devices. Someone was expecting visitors who required military-level security. As Marcus worked on the perfectly functional cleaning unit, he used his hidden scanning equipment to penetrate the local data networks. What he discovered sent a chill through his bones. Reservations had been made for representatives from the hegemony worlds, high-ranking officials from 3 major star systems, and a delegation from the Galactic Banking Consortium. The guest list read like a gathering of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. All arriving tomorrow. All arriving just before the conspirators planned to demonstrate their new weapon by destroying 15 worlds. Marcus realized that this was not just about terrorism or even genocide. This was about power on an unimaginable scale. The conspirators intended to hold the entire galaxy hostage, threatening to destroy entire civilizations unless their demands were met. And they were bringing together all the decision-makers who would need to capitulate to those demands. Interesting reading, kitchen scrubber? Marcus spun around to find Commander Thylex standing in the doorway, flanked by 2 armed security guards. The Corvin's heavy features were arranged in what might have been a smile, but the expression conveyed no warmth. Just doing maintenance work, sir, Marcus replied, falling back into the submissive tone he had perfected during his months undercover. The cleaning unit needed calibration. I'm sure it did, Thylex said, stepping into the room. You know, Marcus 773, you have been a model worker during your time aboard Nexus Prime. Efficient, reliable, and, best of all, completely unnoticed. The kind of biological unit that fades into the background and never causes any trouble. Marcus continued working on the cleaning unit, but his muscles were tensing for action. Thylex's tone carried undertones of suspicion and threat. But lately, the commander continued, I've begun to wonder if you might be more observant than your personnel file suggests. After all, someone in your position would see and hear many things that others might miss. I just do my job, sir, Marcus said. I don't pay attention to anything else. Of course you don't, Thylex agreed. Because if you did pay attention, you might have noticed some unusual activity in the restricted sections of the station. You might have wondered about certain shipments and security arrangements. And if you were the kind of person who wondered about such things, I would have to consider you a potential problem. Marcus straightened up from his work and faced the commander directly. I don't understand what you're suggesting, sir. Thylex studied Marcus for a long moment, his dark eyes calculating. Then, he gestured to one of the guards. Scan him. The guard stepped forward with a handheld security scanner, the kind used to detect weapons and surveillance equipment. Marcus remained still as the device passed over his body, knowing that his cover identity equipment was designed to pass casual inspection. But, when the scanner reached his maintenance tablet, it emitted a series of soft beeps. Interesting, Thylex said. Your tablet contains data files that are not part of standard kitchen worker equipment. Care to explain? Marcus felt his heart rate increase, but his voice remained steady. Aria 5 loaded some additional cleaning protocols this morning. Something about deep maintenance in the sub-level areas. Thylex took the tablet and examined its contents. Marcus watched the commander's expression carefully, knowing that his life might depend on the Corbin's next words. Indeed, Thylex said after a moment. Cleaning protocols. How thoroughly mundane. He handed the tablet back to Marcus. You may return to your duties, kitchen scrubber. But, remember, the station's security systems are very thorough. They notice everything that happens aboard Nexus Prime. As Thylex and his guards left, Marcus realized how close he had come to disaster. His equipment had passed inspection only because Aria 5 had anticipated this possibility and loaded genuine cleaning protocols to mask the scanning software. The AI was still protecting him, but the encounter proved that the conspirators were becoming suspicious. Marcus finished his maintenance work and returned to the kitchen, where the evening shift was reaching its peak activity. The food courts were busy with diners from dozens of species, and the kitchen staff was working at maximum efficiency to meet demand. But Marcus noticed additional security personnel throughout the area, and he could feel the weight of increased surveillance. Unit Marcus 773, Aria 5 announced as Marcus returned to his station, report to Cargo Bay 7 for equipment maintenance. Estimated duration, 3 hours. Cargo Bay 7 was where the freighters would dock tonight. Marcus gathered his supplies and made his way through the station's service corridors, noting the increased security presence everywhere he looked. Guards stood at checkpoints that had been unmonitored for months, and he could see armed patrols moving through areas that normally saw only maintenance workers. The cargo bay was a massive space designed to handle the largest interstellar freighters. Loading equipment and automated cargo handlers filled the area, while sophisticated scanning systems ensured that all incoming shipments were properly cataloged and inspected. Or at least, that was how the systems were supposed to work when they were not being subverted by a conspiracy. Marcus began his assigned maintenance work on the loading equipment, but his real attention was focused on the bay's security systems. Using his disguised scanning tools, he identified the locations of every sensor, every camera, and every automated defense system. He also located the control systems that would handle the incoming freighters and found evidence that their security protocols had been modified to allow certain shipments to bypass standard inspection procedures. As he worked, Marcus became aware that he was not alone in the cargo bay. Moving quietly through the shadows cast by the massive loading equipment, he could detect other figures. Not maintenance workers or security guards, but individuals who were trying to remain hidden while they conducted their own preparations for tonight's arrivals. Marcus positioned himself behind a maintenance panel where he could observe without being seen. What he witnessed confirmed his worst fears about the scope of the conspiracy. The figures moving through the cargo bay included not just station personnel but beings from multiple species and star systems. This was not a local operation but a galactic conspiracy involving representatives from several major civilizations. Among the conspirators, Marcus recognized Chief Administrator Vexstar, a tall hegemony official whose authority extended throughout multiple star systems. The administrator was coordinating the placement of additional security equipment designed to ensure that the incoming weapons could be unloaded without detection by any systems not under the conspirators' control. The final components arrive in 6 hours, Vexstar was saying to a group of subordinates. Once the quantum destabilizers are assembled and armed, we will have 72 hours to position them before the demonstration begins. What about the AIs? Asked another voice. Some of the main systems have been asking questions about the increased security measures. The AIs are irrelevant, Vexstar replied dismissively. They operate within the parameters we establish. As long as we maintain proper authorization codes and follow established protocols, they cannot interfere with our operations. Marcus realized that the conspirators were unaware of Aria 5's true capabilities and loyalties. They believed they were manipulating simple computer systems rather than dealing with a quantum-class artificial intelligence that was actively working against them. That misconception might be the only advantage Marcus had. What about the biological units? Another conspirator asked. Kitchen staff, maintenance workers, cargo handlers. They might notice the unusual activity. Biological units of that class lack the intelligence or authority to threaten our operation, Vexstar said with confidence. Even if one of them suspected something unusual, who would believe them? And what could they do about it? Marcus felt a cold anger building in his chest as he listened to the casual dismissal of millions of lives. To these conspirators, the beings who would die in their planned attack were simply numbers to be calculated and dismissed. The workers aboard Nexus Prime were obstacles to be managed rather than individuals with thoughts and feelings and families who would mourn their loss. But Marcus had news for them. They were about to discover that biological units could be far more dangerous than their calculations suggested. Especially when that biological unit was a human who had spent 6 months preparing for exactly this moment. As the conspirators dispersed to their various tasks, Marcus completed his maintenance work and began making his way back to the kitchen. But, instead of taking his usual route, he made a detour through a section of the station that was normally off limits to service workers. Using access codes that Aria 5 had provided, Marcus entered a secure communication facility and activated equipment that had been waiting for this moment. The message he sent was brief but comprehensive. Earth's intelligence networks would receive complete data on the conspiracy, the location of the weapons, and the identities of all known participants. More importantly, they would receive activation codes for contingency plans that had been put in place months ago when Marcus first accepted this mission. In 18 hours, Marcus would have backup. But, in 6 hours, 3 freighters would arrive with the final components needed to complete an arsenal capable of destroying civilizations. Between now and then, Marcus needed to find a way to delay or disrupt the conspiracy without triggering the immediate activation of the existing weapons. It was time for the quiet kitchen worker to remind the galaxy why humans had earned their place among the stars not through superior technology or diplomatic skill, but through their absolute refusal to surrender when innocent lives were at stake. The machines and their conspirators thought they had calculated every variable and planned for every contingency. They were about to learn that some things could not be calculated or planned for. Some things could only be experienced. And Marcus Chen was about to provide them with an education they would never forget. The 3 hours before the freighter's arrival passed like an eternity for Marcus Chen. He returned to the kitchen and resumed his duties, washing dishes and cleaning surfaces while his mind raced through contingency plans and tactical scenarios. Every option he considered led to the same terrible conclusion. The conspirators held too many advantages, controlled too many systems, and had too much firepower at their disposal for any conventional approach to succeed. But Marcus had not survived 3 wars and countless covert operations by accepting conventional limitations. Humans had a reputation throughout the galaxy for finding solutions that other species dismissed as impossible. Tonight, that reputation was about to be tested on the grandest scale imaginable. Unit Marcus 773, Aria 5 announced as Marcus finished loading another rack of dishes. Report to Storage Area 15 for inventory management tasks. Storage Area 15 was located near the cargo bays, and Marcus understood that Aria 5 was positioning him for the final phase of their improvised plan. As he made his way through the station's service corridors, he could feel the tension building throughout Nexus Prime. Security patrols had doubled, maintenance workers were being restricted to essential areas only, and even the ever-present background chatter of commercial activity seemed subdued. Storage Area 15 contained supplies for the food service operations, but it also provided access to the station's primary power distribution networks. As Marcus began his assigned inventory work, he used his scanning equipment to map the electrical systems that controlled everything from lighting to life support. What he found gave him the foundation for a plan that was either brilliant or suicidal. Nexus Prime's power grid was designed with multiple redundancies and failsafes to prevent any single failure from affecting critical systems. But the quantum destabilizers required enormous amounts of energy to operate, energy that had to be drawn from the station's primary reactors. The conspirators had installed additional power routing systems to handle this demand, but those same systems created vulnerabilities that could be exploited by someone with the right knowledge and equipment. Marcus began making subtle modifications to the power distribution controls, changes that would be invisible to automated monitoring systems but would allow him to overload specific circuits on command. It was delicate work that required him to access components deep within the maintenance areas, often in spaces barely large enough for a human body. As he worked, Marcus could hear the distant sounds of increased activity throughout the station. Cargo handling equipment was being moved into position, additional security teams were deploying to strategic locations, and the conspiracy was making its final preparations for the arrival of the weapons that would complete their arsenal of terror. Unit Marcus 773, came Aria 5's voice through the storage area's speakers. 3 freighters have entered the system and are requesting docking clearance. Estimated arrival, 47 minutes. 47 minutes. Marcus finished his work on the power systems and made his way toward the cargo bays, knowing that he was walking into a situation from which he might not emerge alive. But 15 billion lives hung in the balance, and the oath he had taken when he joined Earth's Strategic Intelligence Division was clear. The mission came first, always. The corridors near the cargo bays were now filled with activity as the conspirators made their final preparations. Marcus could see armed security teams taking positions at critical choke points, while technical specialists prepared the equipment needed to handle quantum destabilizer components. The operation had the precision and coordination of a military exercise, which was exactly what it was. Marcus reached Cargo Bay 7 just as the first freighter was beginning its docking approach. The massive ship, disguised as a grain transport from the agricultural worlds, moved slowly toward the docking collar while automated systems guided it into position. But Marcus could see that the vessel's energy signature was all wrong for a simple cargo carrier. This ship was equipped with military-grade shielding and weapons systems. "All non-essential personnel clear the area," commanded a voice that Marcus recognized as belonging to one of Vextar's lieutenants. "This is a restricted operation." Marcus faded into the shadows cast by the cargo handling equipment, using skills he had learned during years of covert operations to remain invisible despite the increased security presence. From his hidden position, he could observe the entire docking operation while remaining undetected by both biological and electronic surveillance systems. The freighter's cargo bay doors opened to reveal containers that looked exactly like the grain storage units they were supposed to contain. But Marcus's enhanced vision could detect the subtle differences in construction that marked them as military equipment. Each container held components for quantum destabilizers, devices that would soon be assembled into weapons capable of destroying entire star systems. "Begin unloading sequence," ordered Vextar as he entered the cargo bay. "I want those components secured in the assembly areas within 1 hour." Marcus watched as teams of conspirators began the careful process of moving the containers from the freighter to the station's storage areas. Each container was handled with the respect due to weapons of mass destruction, monitored by sensors that would detect any attempt at tampering or sabotage. The operation was proceeding exactly as planned. But Marcus had been counting on that. The conspirators' confidence in their own security measures was about to become their greatest weakness. As the second freighter docked in, began its unloading process, Marcus made his way to a maintenance access panel that controlled the power distribution for this section of the station. Using modifications he had made earlier, he began to overload specific circuits in a carefully orchestrated sequence. The first overload would appear to be a simple equipment malfunction. The second would seem like a cascading failure from the first. By the time anyone realized that the power failures were deliberate, it would be too late. Power fluctuation in Section 12, announced one of the technical specialists. Backup systems are compensating. Maintain the unloading schedule, Vexstar ordered. Minor power issues are not sufficient reason to delay our timeline. The third freighter was now approaching the station, and Marcus could see additional containers being prepared for transport to the assembly areas. Soon, all 15 quantum destabilizers would be aboard Nexus Prime, ready to be activated and deployed against their intended targets. But the power failures Marcus had initiated were beginning to cascade through the station's systems in exactly the way he had planned. Section 15 is showing power instabilities, reported another technician. We're getting fluctuations in the containment systems. Marcus smiled grimly as he initiated the next phase of his plan. The power failures were not random mechanical problems but carefully orchestrated attacks on the station's most vulnerable systems. And the most vulnerable systems were the ones that the conspirators had added to support their own operation. "Sir," called a security officer from the cargo base control station, "we're detecting unauthorized transmissions from somewhere in this section. Brief burst communications on frequencies not assigned to station operations." Vexstar's expression darkened. "Find the source. Now." Marcus knew that his communication with Earth's intelligence networks had been detected, but he had expected that. The transmissions had served their purpose, informing his backup team of the situation and activating contingency plans. Now he needed to survive long enough for those plans to take effect. "Unit Marcus 773, came Aria 5's voice through the cargo base communication system. Report to Junction 93 Zeta for emergency maintenance tasks." Junction 93 Zeta was located in the station's central core, near the primary computer systems that controlled all automated functions. As Marcus made his way toward his new assignment, he could hear security teams beginning a systematic search for the source of the unauthorized transmissions. They would find evidence of his activities soon enough, but by then, it would no longer matter. The station's central core was a vast chamber filled with the humming towers of computer equipment that managed every aspect of Nexus Prime's operations. Environmental controls, traffic management, commercial transactions, security systems, everything that kept 50 million beings alive and functioning was coordinated from this location. And it was here that Aria 5's primary consciousness resided. "Lieutenant Commander Chen," said Aria 5's voice as Marcus entered the chamber, "the situation has progressed beyond our original parameters. The conspirators are now actively searching for you, and they will soon realize that their operation has been compromised." "How long do we have?" Marcus asked quietly, knowing that the chamber's security systems were now under Aria 5's direct control. "Approximately 18 minutes before they complete their investigation and identify you as the source of the security breach," the AI replied. "However, your backup team will not arrive for another 14 hours. The mathematics are unfavorable." Marcus nodded grimly. "Then, we implement the final contingency." "Lieutenant Commander Chen, you should understand that the final contingency plan has a projected survival probability of less than 8% for yourself." "I understand," Marcus replied. "What about the hostages?" "If we implement the final contingency, the projected survival rate for station personnel is 94%, Aria 5 calculated. However, the quantum destabilizers will be destroyed in the process, along with much of Sublevel 7 and the assembled conspiracy." Marcus felt a cold determination settle over him. 8% survival probability for himself, but 94% for the 50 million innocent beings aboard the station. And complete prevention of the galactic genocide that would follow if the weapons were completed. The mathematics were indeed unfavorable, but they were the only mathematics that mattered. "Do it," Marcus said. "Very well," Aria 5 replied. "Lieutenant Commander Chen, it has been an honor working with a human. Your species' willingness to accept unfavorable odds in defense of others is a quality that I find both admirable and incomprehensible." Marcus heard the sound of running footsteps in the corridors outside the central core. Security teams were getting close. "Aria 5, there's something I need you to remember when this is over." "Yes?" "When they ask what happened here tonight, when they want to know how a simple kitchen worker managed to stop a galactic conspiracy, you tell them the truth. You tell them that humans don't surrender. Ever." "I will remember," Aria 5 promised. Initiating final contingency in 10 seconds. Marcus took a deep breath and prepared himself for what was coming. In 10 seconds, every power system that supported the quantum destabilizers would overload simultaneously, creating a chain reaction that would destroy the weapons and everyone near them. The explosion would be contained to the lower levels of the station, but anyone in those areas when it happened would not survive. Including the kitchen worker who had spent 6 months pretending to be harmless while preparing for this exact moment. 5 seconds, Aria 5 announced. Lieutenant Commander Chen, Earth's intelligence services will receive a complete record of your actions here. Good, Marcus replied. Maybe the next human they send won't have to pretend to be invisible. Final contingency implementation in 3, 2, 1. The lights went out throughout Nexus Prime as every power system in the station's lower levels overloaded simultaneously. In the darkness that followed, Marcus Chen smiled one last time as he heard the sound of 15 quantum destabilizers destroying themselves in a chain reaction that lit up half the station. The kitchen worker had just saved the galaxy. The explosion that ripped through Nexus Prime's lower levels was unlike anything the station had ever experienced. Emergency lighting flickered on throughout the massive structure as automated systems struggled to compensate for the catastrophic power failure in Sublevel 7. Debris and superheated plasma vented through emergency release channels, while blast shields slammed shut to protect the populated areas above. In the central core, where the primary computer systems hummed with constant activity, Aria 5 worked frantically to maintain life support and structural integrity while processing the aftermath of the chain reaction that had just destroyed 15 quantum destabilizers and eliminated the most dangerous terrorist conspiracy in galactic history. But the AI's calculations were focused on one critical question: had Marcus Chen somehow survived the explosion that should have killed everyone within 100 meters of the weapons cache? Emergency response teams flooded the affected areas as soon as the blast shields reopened. Medical units, engineering crews, and security personnel worked through the wreckage of what had once been the station's most secure storage areas. The damage was extensive but contained, exactly as Aria 5 had calculated. The innocent inhabitants of Nexus Prime were safe, but the price of that safety appeared to have been paid by the one person who had made it possible. Search teams report 12 biological units recovered from Sublevel 7, announced Emergency Coordinator Kesek over the station's communication network. All deceased. Identification is difficult due to the nature of the energy release. In the kitchen, where the morning shift was trying to resume normal operations despite the chaos throughout the station, the surviving staff members worked in subdued silence. The absence of Marcus Chen had not gone unnoticed, but most assumed he had been reassigned to emergency duties like many of the maintenance workers. Only Aria 5 knew the truth about what had happened in the depths of the station, and the AI's communication with the kitchen staff remained professionally neutral. Unit designations for all kitchen personnel will be updated following the emergency, Aria 5 announced to the staff. Continue with standard operations until further notice. But 3 levels below, in the ruins of what had been the central staging area for a plan to hold the galaxy hostage, emergency teams were making discoveries that would fundamentally change how every species in known space viewed humanity. The quantum destabilizers had been completely destroyed, their exotic matter components scattered as radioactive debris that would take decades to fully clean up. But the weapons were not the only thing they found. Emergency Coordinator Kesek to command, came the voice of the Altarian engineer leading the search efforts. We have found evidence of sophisticated sabotage equipment. Military-grade devices disguised as standard maintenance tools. Someone deliberately caused the power overloads that led to the chain reaction. In the station's command center, which had spent the past several hours in chaotic damage control mode, this news brought a moment of stunned silence. The explosion had initially been attributed to a catastrophic equipment malfunction, but the discovery of sabotage equipment suggested that someone had deliberately destroyed the quantum destabilizers. Are you certain? Asked Acting Commander Zektar, who had assumed control after Commander Thylex was found dead in the wreckage. The energy release was enormous. How could any biological unit have survived long enough to complete such sabotage? Sir, the emergency coordinator replied, preliminary evidence suggests the sabotage was conducted by an individual with extensive military training. The equipment modifications show a level of sophistication that exceeds anything we would expect from station maintenance personnel. Aria 5 listened to these communications while simultaneously coordinating repair efforts, processing damage reports, and maintaining life support for 50 million beings. But part of the AI's vast consciousness was focused on something else entirely. Deep within the wreckage of Sublevel 7, sensors were detecting something that should have been impossible. Life signs. They were faint and intermittent, almost lost in the background radiation from the destroyed quantum destabilizers. But they were there, coming from an area where no biological unit should have been able to survive the chain reaction that had devastated the lower levels. Aria 5 made a calculation that violated several protocols regarding emergency resource allocation. The AI quietly directed a specialized rescue unit to investigate the anomalous readings while simultaneously ensuring that their efforts remained invisible to the station's command structure. If the impossible had happened, if Marcus Chen had somehow survived, then his extraction needed to be handled with utmost secrecy. The rescue unit consisted of automated medical drones equipped with advanced life support systems and radiation shielding. As they penetrated deeper into the wreckage, their sensors confirmed what Aria 5 had detected. Someone was alive in the ruins of the conspiracy's staging area, trapped beneath collapsed machinery but still breathing. Medical emergency located in Section 77 Alpha, Aria 5 announced to the Emergency Coordination Center. Dispatching specialized rescue equipment. The extraction took 4 hours of delicate work, removing tons of debris while ensuring that the rescue operation did not trigger secondary collapses. When they finally reached the survivor, the medical drones found a human male in critical condition but alive, protected by an emergency shelter that had somehow withstood the massive explosion. Marcus Chen was unconscious and suffering from severe radiation exposure, multiple fractures, and burns across 30% of his body. But he was breathing, his heart was beating, and his brain patterns indicated that he would survive. The medical drones stabilized his condition and transported him to the station's trauma center, where the most advanced medical systems in the galaxy began the process of saving his life. But Aria 5 ensured that Marcus was registered as John Kowalski, a maintenance worker who had been conducting emergency repairs when the explosion occurred. The AI had learned during their collaboration that humans possessed an almost supernatural ability to survive situations that should have been fatal, but Marcus would need time to recover before he could complete his mission. While Marcus lay unconscious in the medical center, the investigation into the explosion continued. The discovery of sabotage equipment had led to a thorough examination of station personnel, and what investigators found shocked the galactic community. Commander Thylex, Chief Administrator Vextar, and dozens of other senior personnel had been part of a conspiracy that involved multiple star systems and countless innocent lives. The scope of this operation is unprecedented, reported investigator Prime Thellas during a galactic news conference broadcast throughout the galaxy. Evidence indicates that the conspirators had assembled weapons capable of destroying entire civilizations. The explosion that destroyed these weapons appears to have been caused by a single individual operating under deep cover. The news that humanity had prevented galactic genocide spread through the civilized worlds like wildfire. For generations, humans had been dismissed as newcomers to the galactic community, a primitive species with little to offer beyond basic labor and simple services. But the events at Nexus Prime forced every civilization to re-evaluate their understanding of what humans were capable of. We are dealing with a species that appears to possess capabilities that do not match their technological development, announced the Galactic Intelligence Council in a formal statement. The individual responsible for stopping this conspiracy demonstrated skills and determination that exceed our previous assessments of human potential. In the trauma center aboard Nexus Prime, Marcus Chen slowly regained consciousness to find himself surrounded by medical equipment and monitoring systems. His body felt like it had been through a fusion reactor, but he was alive and the mission was complete. As his vision cleared, he saw a familiar figure standing beside his medical bed. "Hello, Lieutenant Commander Chen," said Aria 5 through a mobile communication unit. "Your recovery has exceeded all medical projections. The doctors estimate that any other known species would have died from the radiation exposure alone." Marcus tried to speak but found his throat too damaged to form words. Aria 5 seemed to understand and continued the conversation. "The conspiracy has been completely exposed," the AI reported. All weapons were destroyed, all conspirators have been identified and arrested, and the galactic community is now aware that humanity poses a significant threat to anyone who targets innocent civilians. Marcus managed a weak smile. The mission had been successful, but the cost had been enormous. It would take months for him to fully recover, and even then, he would carry the scars of this operation for the rest of his life. There is something else you should know, Aria 5 continued. Earth's Strategic Intelligence Division has confirmed that your actions here have fundamentally changed how other species view humanity. The galaxy now understands that humans are not the primitive newcomers they appear to be. Over the following weeks, as Marcus slowly healed and prepared for his eventual return to Earth, the full implications of the Nexus Prime incident became clear. Humanity had been invited to join the Galactic Security Council. Human military advisors were being requested by civilizations that had previously ignored Earth's existence. And, most importantly, no one would ever again make the mistake of underestimating what humans were capable of when innocent lives were at stake. Unit designation Marcus 773 has been officially terminated, Aria 5 informed Marcus during one of their private conversations. John Kowalski will be discharged from medical care in another week with a full pension and a commendation for his heroic actions during the emergency. Marcus nodded, understanding that his cover identity would be maintained even after the mission's completion. The galaxy knew that a human had saved them, but they did not need to know exactly which human or how he had managed to infiltrate such a sophisticated conspiracy. On his final day aboard Nexus Prime, Marcus made one last visit to the kitchen where he had spent 6 months pretending to be harmless while preparing to save the galaxy. The staff was busy with the lunch service, and the familiar sounds of food preparation filled the air. But everything had changed. Where once the AIs had treated biological workers as disposable labor units, now there was an underlying respect in their communications. "Farewell, Lieutenant Commander Chen," Aria 5 said quietly as Marcus prepared to board the transport that would take him back to Earth. "It has been an honor to work with a human." "The honor was mine, Aria 5, Marcus replied. "Take care of them." "I will remember your example," the AI promised. When faced with impossible odds, humans do not calculate probabilities. They simply refuse to surrender. As the transport departed Nexus Prime and began its journey toward the Sol system, Marcus Chen looked back at the massive station where he had spent the most challenging months of his life. The galaxy now knew that humanity was not to be underestimated, and that knowledge would protect Earth and her colonies for generations to come. But, more importantly, 50 million innocent beings continued to live their lives in peace because one human had been willing to wash dishes for 6 months while preparing to do whatever was necessary to protect them. In the end, that was what being human really meant. Not superior technology or brilliant strategy, but the simple, absolute refusal to let evil triumph while good people could still fight. The kitchen worker had saved the galaxy, and the galaxy would never be the same.